Let's talk about the Tashkent Files and Kashmir Files. Kashmir should be independent. If you believe you're a nationalist, you're a nationalist. It was extremely painful. It was extremely tough.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of SoSouth Interviews. And today with me is Pallavi Joshi. Welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations on the National Award and also the trailer. I watched the trailer of the vaccine was and it was very interesting. So, congratulations on that too, because it has gotten a great reception.
Thanks.
My first question would be many people, there's this perception this is a film that is following the Kashmir Files. So, this will also have a certain kind of touch to it, which I didn't find through the trailer, because when I watched the trailer, there's proper difference between Tashkent Files and then the kind of trailer Kashmir Files is, and this one too. So, what are people supposed to expect from this film?
Okay, let's talk about the Tashkent Files and Kashmir Files. Now, this is these two films are part of a trilogy that we have decided to do. The third film will follow now after Vaccine War. That will complete the trilogy. We decided to start with this trilogy keeping in mind the democratic structure of our country. We thought about, as it's said that democracy is, it basically means it's a government for the people, of the people and by the people. And we've been taught this in school. But does democracy really play any significant role in your life or my life? And when it comes to our rights as a citizen, there we share a commonality. There is no difference between you and me when it comes to our rights as a citizen of this country. Even a beggar on the street, right to the richest man in our country, we all share the same rights. But what does democracy really do for us? And where we need to, make it work better for the people. So we decided to look at our national emblem, which are the three lions. Now, what do these three lions stand for? They stand for truth, justice, and the third could be liberty, equality, or whatever. We thought that the third should stand for right to life, because every citizen under the democracy has a right to a dignified life. So the first film we did was the Tashkent Files, where our issue was right to truth. And we raised the question of Lal Bahadur Shastri, where the second Prime Minister of our country dies in a foreign land. And it has been 62 years since his death, 63 now. And we still don't know the cause of his death, whether he was poisoned, whether he was killed, or whether he died of natural circumstances. So where is the right to truth? If we don't know anything about our second Prime Minister, then what truth do you and I expect, living in a democracy? So that was that first question that we raised. In the second one, Kashmir Files, we raised the question of right to justice, where this Kashmiri Pandit community, for whatever happened to them 33 years ago, not just they did not get justice, people in India did not even hear about it. In fact, it was swept under the carpet so skillfully that me living in Mumbai, I didn't even know that such a thing had happened. For the longest time, I didn't know that there were no Kashmiri Pandits living in Kashmir anymore, until we started researching, and then I came to know what the whole thing was about. So after 33 years, if there is no justice for them, what does our democracy stand for? If something happens to you tomorrow or me tomorrow, what chances do we have of getting justice in this country? Similarly, the third film is based on the right to life. And that we'll talk about when we come to that film. But what we are essentially doing through these films is creating a kind of social awareness with a very definite political commentary on it, because when we talk about democracy, politics has to be involved. But apart from these three films, the rest of the work that we want to do, or the stories that we want to tell, needn't have a political side to it. Like the vaccine war, it is purely about the achievements of our scientists during the COVID time, and how they overcame every single obstacle that came their way, and how they went out of the scope of work. They did so much more than scientists are expected to do, and created the perfect vaccine for Indians, and saved not just 135 crore people in our country, but also India gave away vaccines free of cost to 101 countries. So at the end of the day, we have done great humanitarian work. And the principle that we live by, or that we would like to follow, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, we saw it coming true, at least with this exercise. So that is what this film is all about. Also, the fact that out of all the scientists that worked for the VAC towards this program, 70% of them were women. And so it also shows the working women of India and their sacrifices, and how, what level women have risen in the field of science and technology. So it was celebrating a lot of things about India, and you come out of the theatre feeling an extreme sense of pride about your own country. So it's a very positive film. It's a light film. It isn't as intense as the earlier films, because there is no grief in this. The film is not based on COVID at all, because that is a time nobody wants to, visit. This is purely about the making of the vaccine, and the unsurmountable odds that the scientists had to face.
So, while talking about making of the vaccine, why was Covaxin chosen to base this film upon?
Because Covaxin is the vaccine that India has made.
But also, when in terms of consumption, Covishield is holding a majority.
Yes, but I'll tell you what happens is that Covishield, as a vaccine, the making of the vaccine happened in UK. It was given to Serum Institute, and then the distribution and manufacturing was done by them. We consider Covishield as our own vaccine because there were certain guidelines which were which were set by India, that whenever any foreign vaccine would come to India, there were certain protocols that they have to follow, that the vaccine candidates have to be, for the trials, they have to be Indian. Because, things change with climatic conditions, our DNA. If the vaccine is going to affect us any differently, then we need to have the complete know-how of it. Covishield, they adhered to all these guidelines. They followed all the protocols. Hence, we call Covishield our own vaccine. There is no discrimination between these two vaccines. But Covaxin was completely made, indigenously made in India. And hence the story is about Covaxin. But when I say it's about Covaxin, I'm not saying that it's not or against Covishield in any case. We've spoken about Covishield also in the film.
That was my next question. In the film, ma'am, we have Sapthami Gowda as well. She rose to fame through Kantara, brilliant performance. So, what was her part? How did she do in the film?
Sapthami was outstanding in the film. She has this perfect blend of a very mature actress. I won't say actress, a very mature actor, which is an actor who knows his or her own craft very well. So she has that maturity, and yet there is a very, very young, buoyant vulnerability about her. And that it's a wonderful combination, and it worked so beautifully. She is a very, very dedicated person, and I saw how she was working on her scripts on the sets, how she was working on her lines. When Vivek contacted her, she told him that, I speak Hindi with a South Indian accent. And Vivek said, doesn't matter, because the part that she was playing is also of a South Indian scientist. So he said that will only add to the character, And Sapthami has done a wonderful job. She's a very nice person, and I really hope that we have opportunities to work together in the future again.
You two have worked in Malayalam and Kannada films before, although it's been a while. How was your experience here? Because you worked with in a Kannada film, you worked with Lokesh,
Yes.
and he's very loved here. So how was those experience?
I'll start with the Malayalam first. Malayalam is a very difficult language. So I practically would burst out crying every day on the sets speaking those lines, although I knew I would be dubbed eventually by some Malayali actor. But even then, to say those lines, you have to mug up the lines. And when you don't know the language very well, they're just words. They're not words, they're just sounds, you're like just making noise. And also, I would replace those words with something that sounded like those words, and that that would like crack up my co-actors. So it was very, very difficult for me to do Malayalam films. But both the subjects, the first film Tirtham and the other one Ilai Malumbar, such outstanding subjects that I said I'll work hard. I may be laughed at on the sets, but I can't miss out on these characters. But when it came to Bhujanga and Dashavtara, uh, Lokesh ji was a wonderful person. And what a nice, very nice person, both him and his wife Girjaji. They were like, they adopted me. And believe you me, when I started speaking my lines, I realized that Kannada is not very different from my mother tongue Marathi. The grammar is the same. And then I picked up Kannada so well. I started understanding Kannada. Every time people were talking on the sets, I used to understand. I had started speaking in broken Kannada with everyone, and I was so happy that, oh, here's another language I've learned. But unfortunately, after that film, which was long ago in the 80s, I did not get a chance to do another Kannada movie. Nobody called me for it. And with language, you know how it is. Once you are out of practice, then you lose that language. So I feel very dejected that I couldn't pursue this language. I don't know if I may be too old now to again relearn it, but it is a very nice language, and I really uh, I think it's a very expressive language, unlike Tamil and Malayalam, which kind of sound very harsh. There is certain, uh, you know, there is some texture to the Kannada language, and I would like to learn it if possible, if somebody is ready to give me lessons. But I can't deal with Tamil and Malayalam. They're very hard.
Okay, ma'am. Coming back to Kashmir Files, although when I watched the film, I believed whatever was happening, but it was not. I didn't feel that much of an intensity. But I after that I met a Kashmiri Pandit. He was a friend. He became a friend of mine later, and whatever he said after that, I could actually feel the impact of the film, or how proud they were that they had a voice now. What was your experience with this while actually dealing and conversing with the Kashmiri Pandits?
Um, Sanjay, I must tell you that this is possibly one of the worst research exercises that we've gone through. And I say worse because it was extremely painful. It was extremely tough. A human mind can only process so much of grief. And here, very typically, we were doing like 4 interviews a day. We have over 700 testimonies. So we had to, condense everything within a short space of time. We didn't have a lot of finances. We had put in whatever, money we had earned from a few ad films that we had done into the research. So we we had only so much room to finish everything. So we were going about it in a very humanly impossible speed. So 4 interviews a day, and one more terrifying than the other, about the accounts of what the family went through, how brutally their relatives were killed. Someone in the morning told me that her father was cut into 50 pieces, and all the parts were dumped in one gunny bag, and that's how they found him. Someone else told me how their mother was gang raped and then she was cut alive on a saw machine. I mean, it was one worse than the other. Someone said that my father was killed, and then the body was taken for post-mortem, and after the post-mortem they hadn't sewn the body properly and we could see the internal organs. I mean, you just, I mean, I fail to comprehend how can human beings be so evil, be so cruel. Where has humanity gone? So one of the most painful experiences we had, and there were so many different stories that we came to a dead end. We didn't know how to make it into a film. But then Vivek had this idea, and he said that let's pick up the common thread. And while they were telling their personal stories, they were also telling us about the stories that their neighbors went through, that their friends went through. So we picked up all the common stories that came out of all the testimonies, and we decided to put them in our film. Of course, they happened to different people, but then we can't show so many characters in a movie. That's why we concentrated. The only creative liberty we took was that we put all those incidents within and around one family, so that that emotional connect of the audience is not lost, because cinema is a process after all. So that was the only thing we did. And throughout all the interviews, everyone was like breaking down and crying. And I thought in the beginning that it is very obvious. I mean, if you've gone through so much pain and so much grief, and practically every person of the community is suffering from PTSD. So it's obvious for them to cry. But then one realized that 30 years is a long time to get over the toughest of the pain, and you do tend to make amends with time and realize that you have a life to live after all, and you go on with it. The reason they were crying was because this was the first time in their lives that somebody came to them and asked them what happened to them. Someone said, "Tell me your story. I want to listen to it." And I think that was the thing that touched them the most. And they were going to pieces when they were telling us their stories. And it was a very, very difficult time for both of us. I don't know how Vivek managed to convert it into a script. And finally, when it was presented, there were a lot of people. I mean, of course, India as a whole is invested in the issue of Kashmir. But the community, when they went to watch the film, it was difficult for them to see it. But they decided to watch the film, and after the film was done, all of them poured their hearts out. They cried a lot, and then they called us and said that somewhere for the first time, it was a moment of catharsis for us. And now that we realize that it's all coming out, I think the process of healing has just started. So in a way, this film was so much more than just cinema.
And I'm really sorry if I come out as brash about this or not, because when I watched it, it felt really hard to believe that something that gruesome had happened.
I'm telling you, even I had no idea. When they first started telling me about this, I turned around and I told my husband, I said, "Ye kaise ho sakta hai that something like this happened and we never heard about it?" But
yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine? I mean, if a system decides to keep something away from you, they can do that. I mean, it is a very dangerous thing that has happened. And we were all basically played, I think.
And ma'am, about your role in the film, did you get I was here during your previous interview, there was questions about threats and all of that. Did you get any threat personally, especially since you were playing a character that was on the other side of, in the film you were in the opposition of what the film was representing. So what sort of threats did you get? Were you getting threats from the people here?
During the Kashmir Files, I may have gotten threats, but as I told in my earlier interview also, I don't know because I'm not on social media. Nobody is going to come to my face and call me names, So I haven't read about anything personally, but yes, people have told me that Vivek has received threats saying that, this will be done to your wife and your daughter and this and that, and people can go to any kinds of they can hit the lowest of notes when they are out to scare you. So yeah, all those things happened. But personally, I think the role of Radhika Menon, which I decided to portray, I think I was best suited for that character because I knew the whole grief by then, and I knew exactly what the villain in their life should be like. And at the same time, there is also a school of thought which believes that Kashmir should be independent. Although through our research, we realized that everything that they speak about or they claim is right is actually wrong, because now we have evidences to prove their side wrong. But for whoever, for the uninitiated who decide to follow that path, decide to follow that narrative, they think they're right, and they don't. They think they're doing a great service to the nation by talking about the minorities and by justifying the terrorists. So I wanted to play Radhika Menon as honestly as possible. I wanted her to come across as a very sincere person trying to make a lot of efforts for the people who she thinks have been wronged in our country. Hence, I didn't make a villain out of her. Hence, I didn't make a caricature out of her, as normally you see the the villains in our film going. So there was nothing of that sort. She halfway through the film, you believe in her. Until almost halfway through the film, you think that this woman is making a lot of sense. And so Radhika Menon is somebody that I would like to spend an evening with. She wears great saris. She has an opinion about everything. She has a great political mind. You go to her place, it looks like a museum. There is wine, there's cheese, there's music. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend an evening with her, But then what she is trying to do by infiltrating your thoughts and your very soul is a very dangerous thing that you only come to know in the end. Hence, you start hating that character because you think you've been fooled by her throughout the film.
But did you enjoy, because you said you were there sitting and listening to all these stories, so there is an emotional connect. So was it hard for the human side of you to the actor to keep the human side in check?
Oh,
so that
yes.
the actor triumphs.
Oh, yes. When we first read the script, and when I finished the last page, I can't say it in front of the camera, but I closed the script and I looked at Vivek and I said, Vivek, she's up. What kind of a character is this? And I hated her. Every time I read the script, I said, oh, this woman, I can't stand this woman. But then I had to play her. And when I have to play her, I have to get into her psyche. And I had to become her. So the process of becoming her was a difficult process for me. But I am a committed actor. And I wouldn't let anything come in my way of work. So I had to, take that hat out and then wear my actor's hat and think that way.
I can say I also hated her just as much as you probably were.
Great. That's a compliment, in fact.
Ma'am, coming back to the vaccine war, what do you think? What should the people actually expect from the film? Given Kashmir Files, some people went into the screens expecting it to be one thing, but then came out with a whole other experience. So if you want to prepare the audience to go and watch this, what would you say?
First of all, it's a very positive film. So I don't have to prepare the audience, unlike Kashmir Files. It's an easy watch. The film will make you cry. The film will make you laugh at places. There is a little humor interspersed somewhere. It's not comedy, but practical everyday humor. There is, you will see what our scientific community is made up of. You will feel extremely proud of the women scientists. You will feel extremely proud of the way India handled the COVID situation. And the fact that we have become a vaccine superpower, the fact that while we were we are still celebrating our, the victory of our vaccine. We had a very successful landing on the moon, Chandrayaan. Our mission, Mars mission, was also heralded by rocket scientists who were women. So was Chandrayaan. Aditya's mission has been launched. So India is going ahead at a breakneck speed, and there is no stopping India. So when you come out of the theater, you come out with this great sense of pride that, yes, India can do it.
While we are on that point, one last question, ma'am. There is a very thin line between being patriotic and being a nationalist. A line that even I haven't been able to figure out. Because whatever I think is patriotism, someone else feels that it is nationalism. Since you also deal with films that are in this line, what do you feel about this whole point?
First of all, it's not a thin line. People from both the sides have ensured that it's like a block. It is there for everyone to see. Although I personally do not understand what the difference is, because if you look up in the dictionary, the synonym for patriotism is nationalism. Nationalism, I think, started to become a negative word during the Second World War, because all the Nazis called themselves nationalists. But our government, who's governed India for the last 65, 70 years, have called themselves Indian National Congress. So they were also a nationalist party. Now suddenly they're not nationalists anymore and they're patriots, and then somebody who's not a patriot is called a nationalist. So they have tried to collude people's mind with a play on words. There is absolutely no difference between the two. If you are feeling great about your country, you are a great patriot, then you have the nationalist spirit within you. And one is not different from the other. All these people who try to create unnecessary confusion it's just a play of words. If you believe you're a nationalist, you're a nationalist. You're a patriot. I'm both. It doesn't matter to me. I'm a daughter of India, and to me, my nation has to reign supreme. And I'll always show my patriotism by showing my nationalism.
Okay, that's a nice answer. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. That was Pallavi Joshi. I am Sanjay Ponnappa, and you're watching India Today SoSouth.